Welcome to First. I'm Shirley Min along with Michelle Polston and Mark Eichman. A big change in command at the University of Delaware. Education reporter Avi Wolfman-Arent sits down with outgoing President Nancy Target.
2 down, 2 to go. 7 of the candidates looking to replace Wilmington Mayor Dennis Williams debated public safety issues last week. Did any of them distinguish themselves?
And headed to the studio to see what it takes to make award-winning duck stamps. They are a prized possession. We'll show you why. First, your public media news magazine starts now.
The University of Delaware class of 2016 graduated last weekend. It'll be the only class under the watch of President Nancy Target. She's headed to New Hampshire, and a new president gets ready to take over in Newark. Delaware education reporter Avi Wolfman-Arent has our first look this week. Hi, Avi.
Hey, Shirley. Dr. Target was right in the middle of all of those graduation activities, and that's nothing new for her. She's been either a student, researcher, professor, or administrator since 1968. When we sat down, I asked her, what's been the biggest change in higher education over that time?
I think that we've seen a shift in a number of things. I think technology has really driven a lot of the change. I think we've seen changes in student demographics over that time, and I think there's been a lot in terms of expectations from what students expect when they come to a university, from what parents expect for their children when they come to a university. So there's been a shift in all of those sectors.
What's the change in parent expectations?
I think parents want to know that when they're sending their child to school for a higher education, that the students are going to be able to get a job when they come out. And so the parents want to know that we, as an institution for higher education, are helping our students build that portfolio that's going to make them marketable for when they leave the university. And you can do that across any major. You don't have to be in one particular major. You can build that experience from the time you're a freshman on out. And I think parents are looking for institutions that help their children do that.
It seems that also legislators are looking for that, especially with those who are thinking about public universities. They're thinking about outcomes. They're thinking about what majors are better at placing students into jobs so they can contribute to the state's economy. What do you feel about that trend? Is that a positive thing, or is that a dangerous thing for universities?
No, I think it can be. I think it can be a positive thing. I think it's reasonable for states to think that they're making an investment in an institution, and I think that the institution has to be responsive to states and make sure that the states understand how that investment is contributing to the workforce development and also contributing to the economic development in the state.
There is, depending on what estimate you prefer, there's somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.3 trillion in student loan debt.
Yes.
By the White House's estimates, Delawareans alone have about $3 billion in student loan debt. And I think that's just from government loans. So what can colleges do to control costs? And I want you to be bold. I'm not talking about holding tuition steady for a handful of years.
Right.
And what can colleges truly do to try to ameliorate this crisis?
So we do have to try to think outside the box and come up with some alternative scenarios. And colleges and universities, like many institutions, are in an interesting position right now. So we're being called on to do more compliance around research, around Title IX. We have to hire and stand up offices in order to fulfill those mandates. And that costs money. At the same time, we're being asked to hold tuition to be as affordable as we can be. So some of the things that the University of Delaware has really tried to do, first of all, we're very mindful of costs and affordability. And as you no doubt know, Kiplinger's, Money Magazine, Forbes, they all see us as a very good value institution. Princeton Review sees us as an institution that pays you back. So the value you get when you come to the university, I think, is a really something that's really good. But one of the things that we're doing, especially for Delaware residents, as a public institution in the state, as an institution that gets state funding, we've made a commitment to Delawareans. And what we have said is that if the students follow an academic track in high school, we will virtually guarantee them admission to the University of Delaware, and we will meet the full demonstrated financial need. And beyond that, we will cap the loans that students will take out so that it's not more than 25% of the cost of their education. So we really tried to take some very bold steps in which we limit the loan debt that students will have when they leave the University of Delaware.
Is there anything that universities do now that they can maybe stop doing that would help control costs? I mean, you talked about all the compliance pressures you have. That adds administrative costs.
It does.
Obviously, college athletics are not free. Is there anything universities are doing right now that can be shed, that can help reduce the burden on families?
So I think that what it would come down to is I think institutions have to look individually at their situation and have to decide where they're going to focus things. We do see this happening with athletics in different institutions across the country where they're shedding certain aspects of athletics, for example, or trying to use technology to improve delivery of courses and course offerings. And so trying to take advantage of technology, trying to streamline programs and to sunset programs that are no longer relevant, perhaps, in are ways that one can do that.
I also asked Dr. Target to name someone in higher education she really admires, and she named the new president at the University of Washington, a woman of Cuban-American descent. And her answer really illuminated some of the things that she values, including diversity in higher ed administration.
What do you think was the most interesting answer from her?
I was interested in what she said about parents. She said that they're really interested in an immediate payoff from a college degree, the value proposition of a college degree.
Meaning jobs.
Absolutely. And I think that worries a lot of people in higher ed, especially in the humanities, who worry that their fields are going to be de-emphasized in favor of fields with a more direct link to the workforce.
Yeah, I can't imagine English professors are too happy
No,
about that
not
change.
at all, not at all.
Avi, thank you so much. And as always, you can read more of our education coverage at newsworks.org/Delaware.
Coming up on First, a truly surreal Delaware experience. Meet a Delaware artist who started his career as an electrician. And later, we'll tell you how to take the Delaware quiz.
7 Democratic candidates trying to unseat Wilmington Mayor Dennis Williams took part in the second of a series of debates sponsored by WHYY and the News Journal. Mayor Williams did not attend. The debate will air in its entirety on June 5th at 2:30 on WHYY-TV. The debate focused on public safety, including the shooting death of wheelchair-bound Jeremy McDowell by Wilmington police officers.
What was your gut reaction when you first saw the video?
My gut reaction to it was, I had a friend of mine who was shot and killed. That was my gut reaction. Somebody I knew personally and saw day to day on the streets, who had his, nobody's an angel around here and had his bad moments. But if we had true community policing officers, well, an officer would have known who Bam was sitting in that wheelchair, it would have been a different situation. We need youth intervention workers. But what is most struggling to me is when we have an officer who commits a violent act and kills someone, we have protests up and down the street, rightfully so. But when a young person dies, we put up candles, teddy bears, and posters to try and find a killer. That has got to change because it's not working. It's got to change for the better for everyone.
Having been a federal prosecutor here in the state of Delaware, I made a comment early on before that's from my experience, and I've looked at these things before. That's the reason I referenced that. I made the comment early on before you knew what the decision was that the feds should be called in. And that would not favor either the police and it wouldn't favor the victim. But they should have been called in. This is why the federal government gives you that layer of trust at the federal level versus the state and police level. Doesn't mean that they're going to do something wrong, but the purpose of the federal government in these situations is to give you a disinterested third eye to look at the situation. That's a fact. That's the policy of the federal government. So I believe, not hindsight, you don't do it now because of the way they made their decision. It should have been done early on, calling in the federal government to take a look at this situation. And I do believe that there's some recommendations for some best practices, some better practices that have come out of the report. Thank
Michelle?
Okay, candidate Young, you're going to be on a hot seat now. How can you ensure voters that your experience is enough to run this city and tackle crime in a way that voters see immediate results?
For me, it comes in with A, setting a culture, B, hiring the best and the brightest. We're going to have a national search working with the Police Foundation. We've already come up with plans, detailed plans around public safety and how criminal justice reform falls into this. This is a comprehensive effort. And so everything that we're doing now will be emblematic of what we plan to do in moving forward.
So when it comes to your experience?
Well, when it comes to my experience, I've worked in the United States Senate. I've helped cities get resources, whether radios or vehicles or whatever the case may be, resources for their department, one of the issues that we're dealing with now. We have millions of dollars of grant money on the table that we have not tapped into. I've worked with many different police departments, Camden, New Jersey. I've been to their data center years ago, understanding what operations look like in other cities and other areas. So I have a breadth of experience of seeing outside of the box. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we're missing right now. We have to have a view from outside the box if we want to change the city.
Okay, playing devil's advocate. Candidate Gregory, is that enough?
No. No, it's not. No. Let me say this. I think you have to look at the situation in terms of prevention, intervention, again, law enforcement and reentry. My experience covers the gamut and evidence that I can show you some of the things that I've done. At 33 years of age, I was a federal prosecutor, and I was, yes, I said it again because it's relevant. I was the attorney assigned to all the firearm cases here in the district, all of the drug cases here in the district, talking to FBI agents and ATF agents and DEA agents, and it was challenging. It was challenging. It was a learning experience. But there are some nuances running the city is not something you read in a book. There are some nuances to running the city that you have learned over the years. You have to learn over the years. There's a history that you have to understand in order to move the city forward. So I respect Gene Young. I have the utmost respect for the young man. But I'll say, like my grandmom used to say, you don't know what you don't know that you don't know.
Candidate Young.
So let me say this. If you walk around this city, there's only one statue of a mayor, a former mayor of this city standing up, right? And that mayor is Tom Maloney, who was 29 years old. I'm significantly older than he was. But what it means is age does not dictate impact. And for too long within our city, we've played the game of wait your turn. You fall in line. But here's what happens. We stagnate growth as a city. We look like we're not working with others. And this is just in general period. We cannot ask for millennials, young people come here, but you can't have this job. You know, we need to attract more young people to start businesses, but just not this job. We have to have a different attitude around engagement within this city. We have to understand that ideas are ideas regardless who they come from. We have to understand that we have to work together in order to move the city forward.
Brittany?
Here's what I'd say. I've got to say something about that.
Candidate Brzezicki?
I've got to say something about that. Tom Maloney was my dear friend. 2 years after Tom was elected mayor, he was running for the United States Senate. The second thing is, if this were a company and it had a $240 million budget with 1,100 people, disgruntled people, with half of those employees with no contract, and a city that had a crime problem and a national reputation that was in tatters, if you'd ask yourself, who would you hire to do that? If someone interviewed for that job, I just can't even imagine somebody with that kind of a resume would even get past the first round. Not even to pass the first round, let alone the interview process.
So my question to you is this. Does that mean that we elect those who may have had their hand on the wheel for such a long period of time?
It means you've got to have a minimum amount of competence to run.
What we need to understand, ladies and gentlemen, is that we are a city together, and for too long we've been divided, and for too long we've looked out for certain groups. The problem is we have to work together.
What does that mean?
I'll tell you this, that there's other neighborhoods than just certain ones, and you know what I'm talking about.
You're damn right.
May-
and I'm
may I
lobbying to
speak?
take care of the
May I
neighborhoods that
speak?
need it.
Oh,
And
you
we-
know, may I
I've been in this-
speak?
let me-
Hold on 1 second, please.
get some
Because
order.
candidate, hold on
May I
1
speak?
second,
We
please.
need to gain control of
May I
this
speak?
conversation
I'm
here.
sorry, gentlemen, I apologize.
Mr. Young has made his point.
Mr. Kelly, I'm trying to conduct this, so candidate Cabrera's been polite. She will go next.
Thank you. You know, we talk about change and we say we want change. And no disrespect to the people that are here and the service that they have given. But when I look at the city of Wilmington today, I see a city that took two decades to get us to this point. I see a state that invested $500 million to build a new city, and they did not economically revitalize this city and its people by giving them jobs. That's one point. The second point is we have everyone sitting here other than Mr. Przicki and Eugene Young has had an elected seat on city council, in the state legislature, including Dennis Williams. And are we any better off today? Did these people have a rebirth all of a sudden? They have these great ideas, they're going to do something different? No, the time is changing. If you want change, let me tell you something. It's time you elect a woman and some common sense into the mayor's office.
Candidate Marshall? Candidate Marshall, you want to speak?
Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment.
Thank you.
I have experience.
May I make a comment?
No,
Thank you.
it's candidate Marshall's turn.
If I could
make a
respond
comment.
briefly.
Let me say this.
Wait a minute.
It's
now.
candidate
Whoa.
Marshall speaking.
Time out.
Leading the city from the vantage.
Candidate Gregory, candidate Marshall is speaking.
I'm
I've said it
sorry.
3 times.
I'm sorry. I can't hear it. It
If-
bounces off, there's an echo.
If I may reiterate, in the state legislature, I worked to get state funds to bring it back to Wilmington for neighborhood police stations, for the gun buyback. We have provided millions and millions of dollars. You can't blame the legislature. You can't blame those that have been in public office. There is an issue here of poverty, of low income, of a divide, and this city needs a bridge that bridge can cover that divide and create opportunity. But to suggest that the state legislature and the governors have been unfair is an unfair statement that demagogues an issue, because I've been loyal and committed to the people who elected me, and don't ever suggest that I haven't been.
Candidate Gregory?
Yeah, let me say this. Having your hands on the wheel as an elected official, as an at-large councilperson, as I have, it's a different lens that you look through versus the mayor or the president of city council. I was an at-large councilperson with my hands on the wheel. The mayor drives 80 to 85% of the policy. The president leads the other 15% with 13 people. That is challenging. So you can't indict everyone who's been elected all this time to say it's where we are is their fault. You have mayors and you have presidents of council. Also, I want to note that you have a building named after McLaughlin, you have a bridge named after Sills, and you also have a bridge named after Baker. So other folk, not based on age, have things named after them. So there's nothing magical about the age. There's nothing magical about the age.
Candidate Kelly?
I agree. Mr. Young, see what you started? But, you know, Mr. Young, have the most respect for Mr. Young and all the candidates up here. It's easy to throw stones at all of us that have been in, you know, in the legislation for a while. But let's be clear about a lot of things. There needs to be change in the city. And the voters need to figure out who of us, 7 or 8, whoever you may want to check, is going to make that change. I've been called the mini-mayor. I fought Sills, I fought Baker. I was never rubber stamping anything. That's not my style. I'm here to fight for the people no matter what. I have a vision that I think would be beneficial to everybody in this city. Mr. Przicki talks about, you know, $200 million and 1,100. I manage a budget of $2.4 billion and 4,100 people. I understand what has to happen. I've been on city council for 20 years. I've served for 35 years. I've given more money out to pay for people's food bills, gas and electric, fires than anybody on this sitting up here. So let's be realistic about what's needed. The place is on fire. We need to have somebody who can come in and put the fire out who's experienced.
Candidate Cabrera?
So this is my question. Who negotiated the contract? Who agreed and voted on that contract that has some little CYA clause that we should encourage minority business participation? Because when that riverfront was built, there was a real opportunity here when people lost all those jobs, GM, Chrysler, when we went into a recession. Why do we have 1,700 vacant properties? Because those people's homes went into foreclosure. We lost our middle class in Wilmington. Those jobs, they should have been looking at this side. And now we have a riverfront, which I love. We all use it. We love it, but it's gentrified. And I don't blame Mr. Pazicki because he didn't negotiate the contracts. We practically gave the land away, and we made no demands that they should hire. They should have mandated hiring of minority businesses and the people in the city of Wilmington, and that was not done. And that was the biggest crime and the biggest sin. That is the crime that we're suffering in Wilmington now. And you wonder why our neighborhoods are in poverty? You wonder why black people don't have jobs? And then you talk about jobs in the riverfront. I am waiting for there to be a black waitress at the riverfront in any one of those restaurants to wait on me, because city people don't work down there. Maybe in catering, maybe at the movie theater, and that's it.
Candidate Young.
No, that's just.
Candidate Young.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I just want to reiterate this. Let's be clear about a couple things. We have, at the deep-seated issue, we have neighborhoods that have been neglected for years. For years. You go around 6th and Jefferson. You go in areas around the Northeast. You have areas, kids that are suffering and hurting, and this has not just happened yesterday. I've been running a nonprofit organization for children dealing with many of these kids from these different neighborhoods for the last decade. This has been ongoing. But what I'm here to tell you is this, ladies and gentlemen. We have to have a larger vision, a grander vision, and we have to understand that ideas, no matter what age they come from, no matter who they come from, it doesn't matter about one's background or one's age in regards to the impact that they can create.
Thank you, Candidate Young.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Candidate Pazicki. Quickly.
Maria said it wasn't my fault, but she really got to whack the riverfront. Riverfront gives $7 million a year back to the city each and every year. We have hundreds and hundreds of people working from our communities at the ShopRite, at the Chase Center, and at our restaurants, Maria. You just don't go to the right ones. And the city got paid for every single piece of ground that it sold. The city got $1.2 million for the land that Justice and Landing is on.
You can watch the entire debate on Sunday, June 5th at 2:30 on WHYY-TV. Our next debate will be held on June 14th at the Grand Opera House. The focus of that discussion will be the arts. That debate will be broadcast on June 19th. The final debate, though, focused on quality of life, will be held Tuesday, July 19th at Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Church. The mayor did originally promise to attend 2 debates. We have some tickets set aside for WHYY members. Go to WHYY.org/member events to request a pair. You can also get tickets at DelawareOnline.com.
Richard Clifton loves birds and wildlife. He was inspired by nature while growing up on his family's Delaware farm. He's especially interested in painting ducks. He won the federal duck stamp competition multiple times and has designed stamps for many states, including Delaware. His work is our first experience.
I've been painting now probably about 25 years, I guess. As a kid, I was inspired by my dad working in the fields. We were farmers. I used to draw tractors and farm equipment with crayons and color pencils. Somewhere along the way, got a little older and found myself interested in birds and started drawing warblers and other songbirds and painting them with a watercolor set. So as I got even older, probably in my later teens, I got into waterfowl hunting, and that was sort of then the transition that really got me going on a lot of the waterfowl and duck art, and then that kind of paved the road to becoming a full-time wildlife artist. starting a painting is always exciting. And of course, finishing is also another exciting part of the painting, because then you've got it complete, you can sit it up, you can look at it. That's a good moment, makes you feel good. So I think what keeps you going or drives you is just the fact that you're creating this, and the better you can do it and the better it can turn out, is just that inspiration just is satisfying. Our family were waterfowl hunters, so I knew my dad went waterfowl hunting, and he had to buy one of the federal duck stamps every year. And I would see the ones that he bought, and I was always inspired looking at those. So time went by and states started having contests. I did win Delaware, and from that point I went on in 2006 to win the federal duck stamp contest. Currently I'm up to a total of 43 duck stamps. This is the first year that I ever got Ducks Unlimited Artist of the Year award. And so that, kind of almost like winning the federal duck stamp contest for me as a personal life goal as an artist. That was one of my career goals. I hope that they see some of the same things that I see. You can look at this and get lost in this painting and start to think, oh, I could have been there. This reminds me of a place. I think as long as I live, I don't think I'll ever get tired of watching ducks work. When they circle and set their wings and they're working a wetland and thinking about coming in, I could sit there and stare at that all day long. It makes you want to do them justice by, painting an image that, you feel like nature would be proud of.
The federal duck stamp competition is the only juried art competition sponsored by the federal government. The proceeds from the sale of those stamps and the state stamps go towards protecting wildlife and their habitat around the country. You can see more of Richard's work when you visit his website, richardcliftonwildlifeart.com.
Next week on First, we'll tackle the topic of prison reform. Keeping people from returning to prison is a part of a pilot program from the Hope Commission.
And we also want to put in another pitch for you to take our interactive video quiz. You can find out, for instance, who was the first documented European to set foot in Delaware. No, don't say it. Put yourself to the test at WHYY.org. Just search for Delaware, the quiz.
All good stuff. And that is First for this week. We thank you for watching. For Avi Wolfman-Arent, Mark Eichman, and Nichelle Polston, I'm Shirley Min. Have a great week.